The morning Sarah Chen stepped out of her apartment in New Tokyo, she had no idea it would be humanity's last peaceful day for a very long time. The sky was clear, traffic moved in its usual chaotic dance, and the smell of street food filled the air. She grabbed her coffee and headed to work at the Global Defense Network. Just another routine day at the office, at least. That's what she thought. The first sign something was wrong came at 11:47 a.m. local time. Sarah was reviewing satellite feeds when every screen in the command center suddenly went dark. Emergency power kicked in, bathing everything in red light. Then came the sound, a low humming that seemed to vibrate through the building's steel frame. "What the hell was that?" muttered her colleague Jake, frantically typing at his workstation. Before anyone could answer, the screens flickered back to life. But instead of familiar Earth satellite imagery, they showed something impossible. Massive ships, each one the size of a city, hung in space around their planet like dark metal moons. The vessels were unlike anything in human engineering. Smooth, organic curves mixed with sharp angular sections that seemed to shift and flow as if alive. Director Martinez burst through the command center doors, his usually calm demeanor replaced by barely controlled panic. "People, we have a situation. These ships appeared simultaneously over every major population center on Earth. We're talking about 200 vessels minimum." Sarah felt her stomach drop. She'd studied theoretical alien contact scenarios for years, but seeing it happen was entirely different. The ships weren't trying to communicate. They weren't broadcasting messages of peace or scientific curiosity. They just hung there, silent and menacing, like storm clouds gathering before a hurricane. The first attack came 30 minutes later. It started in Beijing. A single beam of purple energy descended from one of the ships, striking the city center. Where it touched, buildings simply vanished. Not destroyed, not collapsed, but completely gone as if they had never existed. The beam swept across the metropolitan area for exactly 60 seconds, leaving behind a perfectly circular void 2 kilometers wide. 20 million people, gone in a minute. Similar attacks began across the globe. London, New York, Mumbai, São Paulo. Every major city experienced the same methodical destruction. The aliens, whoever they were, seemed to be making a statement. They could erase humanity's greatest achievements without effort. Sarah watched the feeds in horror, her hands shaking as she tried to coordinate evacuation efforts. But how do you evacuate when the enemy can simply delete entire city blocks? How do you fight an enemy whose technology makes your best weapons look like stone tools? "Ma'am," a technician called out. "We're getting reports of ground forces landing in the cleared zones." The landing craft were as disturbing as the motherships, living metal that flowed like liquid before hardening into geometric shapes. From these vessels emerged the hegemony, as they would later call themselves. They stood 8 feet tall on average, with gray skin that seemed to absorb light. Their faces were almost human but wrong in subtle ways. Eyes too large, mouths that didn't quite line up properly, expressions that suggested intelligence but no empathy. The first communication came through every device on Earth simultaneously. Phones, computers, radios, even digital billboards. Everything capable of displaying text or sound carried the same message. "Primitive species of Sol 3. Your world has been selected for resource integration. Your biological matter will be processed. Your planet will be harvested. Resistance is illogical. Compliance will reduce suffering duration. No demands. No negotiations. No mercy." Sarah stared at the message on her screen, reading it over and over. These beings saw humans the way humans might see bacteria, inconvenient life forms to be cleaned away before the real work began. The clinical language made it somehow worse than threats or anger would have been. "Director," she said, surprised by how steady her own voice sounded. "What are our military's options?" Martinez looked older than his 60 years. "We've been in contact with every major defense force on the planet. Nuclear weapons are being prepared, but early reports suggest their shields can absorb massive amounts of energy. Conventional weapons barely scratch their smallest craft." The next few hours brought nothing but bad news. Fighter jets fell from the sky after brief engagements, their missiles harmlessly absorbed by alien point defense systems. Tank columns were wiped out by walking machines that moved like spiders but hit like artillery. Naval forces reported ships simply sinking after being touched by some kind of molecular disintegration field. Humanity's most advanced military technology was proving useless against an enemy that treated physics like a suggestion rather than a law. By evening, The hegemony controlled every major population center on Earth. Refugee streams fled into rural areas, but even there, smaller alien craft hunted survivors with methodical efficiency. The creatures seemed to take no pleasure in the killing. They approached it like a job, systematic and thorough. Sarah found herself in one of those refugee streams, the global defense network having been abandoned when alien forces began landing at military installations. She walked alongside millions of others down highways clogged with abandoned vehicles, carrying nothing but the clothes on her back, and a growing certainty that humanity was finished. But as night fell and she looked up at the stars, now partially blocked by the looming shapes of alien vessels, something unexpected stirred in her chest. Not hope, exactly. Something harder and more dangerous. The aliens had made one critical error in their assessment of humanity. They saw Earth's population as resources to be harvested, obstacles to be removed. They calculated based on technology levels, military capabilities, and resource distribution. What they failed to account for was what happened when humans truly believed they had nothing left to lose. In the darkness between destroyed cities, in hidden bunkers and remote wilderness camps, in the depths of mountains and the vastness of ocean trenches, something was awakening. Not the comfortable, civilized humanity that had built cities and governments and carefully managed conflicts. The other humanity. The one that had climbed down from trees with nothing but sharp sticks and claimed an entire planet. The one that had survived ice ages and plagues and wars that should have ended their species. The one that had looked at the impossible and decided to make it possible. Anyway, the hegemony had attacked Earth expecting to face the humanity they could see, the one with satellites and smartphones and international treaties. They were about to meet the humanity they couldn't see, the one that had been sleeping beneath the surface of civilization, waiting for a reason to wake up. Tomorrow would bring the first surprise. The first surprise came from Antarctica. Dr. Elena Vasquez had been studying ice core samples at Research Station Omega when the attacks began. Like most remote installations, the station had been ignored during the initial wave of destruction, too isolated to matter. Or so the aliens thought. What they didn't know was that Research Station Omega was a cover story. 3 kilometers beneath the ice lay Project Deep Freeze, a joint international facility that officially didn't exist. For 40 years, the world's best scientists had been working on technologies considered too dangerous or unpredictable for surface testing. Quantum tunneling weapons, artificial black hole generators, dimensional fold drives. The kind of projects that could either revolutionize civilization or accidentally destroy it. Elena wasn't really a climate researcher. She was a theoretical physicist specializing in exotic matter manipulation, and she was very, very angry. "Marcus, tell me you got the quantum resonance chamber online," she called across the facility's main lab, her voice echoing off walls lined with machinery that looked more like alien technology than human engineering. Dr. Marcus Webb looked up from a console covered in warnings and error messages. "It's online, but Elena, the power requirements are insane. We'll drain our entire geothermal grid in less than 10 minutes. Then we better make those 10 minutes count." Above them, alien patrol craft swept across the Antarctic landscape, their sensors detecting the massive energy buildup, but unable to pinpoint its source through the ice and electromagnetic shielding. The hegemony had learned to recognize human power signatures. Nuclear reactors, fusion plants, even large hydroelectric facilities. But this was something new. Elena's fingers flew across holographic interfaces, adjusting parameters for an experiment that should have taken months of preparation. But humanity didn't have months. They had whatever time remained before the aliens finished, processing the cities and turned their attention to smaller settlements, initiating quantum cascade in 3, 2, 1. The effect was invisible to normal sensors, but Elena watched the readings with growing amazement. Quantum fields were folding space-time around the facility, creating a pocket of reality where the usual rules became flexible. It was technology they'd only theorized about, based on observations of cosmic phenomena that shouldn't exist. "Marcus, are you seeing this? The quantum foam is stabilizing." Above the ice, 3 alien patrol craft suddenly lurched sideways as gravity shifted beneath them. Their pilots, if that's what they were, struggled to compensate. But the laws of physics were becoming unreliable in a growing sphere around the research station. One craft tried to fire at the source of the disturbance. Its energy beam curved impossibly, looped back on itself and struck its own shields. The second craft attempted to retreat but found itself flying backward, despite its engines pushing forward. The third simply imploded as space-time folded it into a point smaller than an atom. "Holy shit," Marcus whispered. "We just made 3 alien ships cease to exist by making reality have a nervous breakdown." Elena was already planning the next phase. "Get me a direct line to every major government bunker still operational. If they want to know how to fight gods, we're about to teach them." The call went out on quantum-encrypted channels that the aliens couldn't intercept because they relied on principles the hegemony didn't understand. Within hours, similar facilities were activating around the globe. Hidden installations in the Sahara, beneath the Amazon rainforest in the depths of the Mariana Trench. Humanity had been preparing for this war longer than anyone realized, just not against aliens. The projects had originally been developed for potential conflicts with other humans, based on the assumption that conventional weapons would eventually become obsolete. Nuclear deterrence only worked when both sides feared destruction. But what if someone developed technology that made nuclear weapons irrelevant? The answer was to develop something even more impossible. In the Sahara facility, Dr. Ahmed Hassan activated arrays that could manipulate the strong nuclear force itself, making atoms decide to spontaneously rearrange themselves. Alien ground forces found their own bodies becoming unstable, as the fundamental particles that composed them suddenly remembered they had other options. Beneath the Amazon, Dr. Maria Santos initiated experiments with temporal mechanics that created localized time loops. Alien reinforcements would arrive at battle sites only to discover they were fighting the same engagement over and over, trapped in recursive causality. In the Mariana Trench installation, Dr. Kenji Tanaka activated dimensional resonance chambers that opened tiny gateways to universe where physics worked differently. Alien ships found themselves dealing with environments where their shields provided no protection because the very concept of energy didn't exist in the same way. But the most significant breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. Robert Ashby had been considered the black sheep of the theoretical physics community for decades. His papers on consciousness-based reality manipulation were routinely rejected by scientific journals, dismissed as pseudoscience by his peers, which was exactly why the military had quietly funded his research and hidden it in a facility beneath the Colorado Rockies. "The aliens are making the same mistake our scientists did," he explained to Elena during a quantum-encrypted conference call. "They assume consciousness is a byproduct of complex matter. But what if it's the other way around? What if matter is a byproduct of consciousness?" Elena frowned at her screen. "Robert, we don't have time for philosophy. We need weapons. This is a weapon. The most powerful one imaginable. These aliens have incredible technology, but they're still thinking materialistically. They don't understand that reality responds to observation at the quantum level because they've never encountered a species that learned to observe correctly." On the surface above his facility, hegemony ground forces were methodically clearing the Rocky Mountain region. Their weapons could disintegrate matter, their shields could absorb any form of energy attack, and their armor could withstand temperatures that would melt tungsten. But they had never faced an enemy that could convince the universe they didn't exist. Robert's facility contained no weapons in any conventional sense. Instead, it housed meditation chambers, consciousness amplification devices, and quantum observation arrays. For 40 years, a small group of humans had been learning to perceive reality at the most fundamental level, and more importantly, to change what they perceived. The first test was simple. A single hegemony trooper patrolling near the facility entrance suddenly stopped existing. Not dead, not disintegrated, simply absent from reality as if it had never been born. The universe quietly edited its own history to remove the inconvenience. "Elena," Robert's voice carried a note of wonder. "We just deleted an alien from existence by having a really focused conversation with quantum foam. Reality agreed with us that the alien wasn't supposed to be here. How many people can you train to do that? Give me a list of everyone with advanced meditation experience, deep physics knowledge, or strong visualization abilities. Tibetan monks, quantum physicists, professional athletes who've mastered mental focus, artists who can see things that don't exist yet. We're going to teach them to argue with the universe and win." Across the globe, hidden facilities were achieving the impossible through different approaches. But the message was the same. Humanity hadn't spent millions of years evolving just to be harvested by superior technology. They had evolved to be the universe's favorite problem solvers. The species that looked at impossible situations and found ways to make them possible. The hegemony had expected to face primitive warriors with crude weapons. Instead, they were encountering beings who could rewrite physics through pure stubbornness, alter causality through creative thinking, and convince reality itself to take humanity's side in the argument. As alien command centers began receiving reports of impossible losses and inexplicable phenomena, one thing became clear. Earth was not going to be an easy harvest after all. Commander HFY of the Hegemony Third Fleet stared at the tactical display with growing confusion. In 3,000 years of galactic conquest, they had never encountered anything like this. The primitive species of Sol 3 should have been processed within one planetary rotation. Their technology was laughably basic: chemical rockets, electromagnetic radiation for communication, crude fusion reactions for power. The initial assessment had classified them as threat level null, barely worthy of a monitoring probe, let alone a full harvesting fleet. Yet somehow, in the span of 2 local days, they had lost 67 ships and over 3,000 ground units to weapons that didn't exist. "Report," HFY commanded, their voice carrying the harmonic undertones that indicated deep concern. Sub-Commander Krill then manipulated the holographic display, highlighting areas of unexpected resistance. "Sir, the pattern defies analysis. Our forces encounter localized reality distortions that seem to violate fundamental physical laws. Matter spontaneously reorganizes itself, causality becomes nonlinear, and in several instances our troops have simply ceased." "Ceased? Not killed, sir. Erased from existence, as if they never were. Our quantum signature archives show no record of their creation, deployment, or destruction. The universe appears to have edited itself to exclude them." HFY felt the familiar sensation of encountering a problem beyond their considerable experience. The hegemony had conquered 47 star systems, harvested the resources of 300 worlds, and processed the biological matter of 2,000 species. They had faced enemies with superior technology, others with exotic physical capabilities, and even a few with rudimentary psychic abilities, but they had never faced an enemy that could argue with reality and win. What about the primary population centers? Surely the main harvesting operations continue without interference? Krillven's response carried notes of embarrassment. "Sir, we have lost contact with processing facilities in 7 major metropolitan areas. The humans appear to have adapted to our presence with unprecedented speed. What the aliens didn't understand was that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their hidden technology or even their ability to manipulate physics. It was their capacity to learn, adapt, and share information at a rate that bordered on collective consciousness." In the ruins of what had been Chicago, Sarah Chen crouched beside a makeshift communication array built from salvaged smartphones, car batteries, and copper wire stripped from abandoned buildings. Around her, a group of survivors that would have seemed impossible weeks earlier worked together with perfect coordination. There was Dr. Yuki Tanaka, a quantum physicist who had escaped from a research facility in Japan. Beside her sat Brother Michael, a Franciscan monk whose 40 years of meditation had prepared him for consciousness-based reality manipulation in ways he never expected. Next to him hunched Tommy Wire Rodriguez, a street artist whose ability to visualize impossible geometries had made him surprisingly effective at convincing space-time to fold in useful directions. "The pattern is spreading," Sarah reported into her improvised transmitter. "Every major resistance cell is confirming the same thing. The aliens' technology depends on stable physical laws. When we destabilize local reality, their weapons stop working properly." Across the emergency network, similar reports were flooding in. In London, a group of university students led by a former physics professor had discovered that aggressive disbelief could cause alien energy weapons to misfire. In Tokyo, a collective of manga artists were literally drawing new physical laws into existence, their shared visualization skills allowing them to impose artistic logic on quantum systems. Most remarkably, the resistance was self-organizing. Without central command, without formal military structure, humans were somehow coordinating their impossible, Attacks across the globe with frightening efficiency. Brother, Michael looked up from the meditation device. He'd been assembling from smartphone components and salvaged electronics.
Sarah, I think I understand what's happening.
It's not just that we're learning to manipulate reality. We're remembering something we used to know. What do you mean? Think about human mythology. Every culture has stories about heroes who could break the laws of physics, walking on water, moving mountains, stopping the sun. What if those weren't metaphors? What if consciousness-based reality manipulation was normal for early humans? But we lost the ability when we started depending on technology. Dr. Tanaka nodded slowly. It would explain why this feels familiar rather than impossible. Quantum mechanics already showed us that consciousness affects reality at the subatomic level. Maybe early humans were naturally quantum entangled with their environment. Tommy looked up from the geometric pattern he'd been spray painting on a section of rubble. So you're saying these aliens picked the wrong time to invade? Right when we're remembering how to be magic? Not magic, Brother Michael corrected. Prayer, meditation, focused intention. Every human spiritual tradition developed techniques for this. But we interpreted them as metaphors because we thought matter was primary and consciousness was secondary. Sarah felt something clicking into place. The hidden facilities, the impossible weapons, they weren't really hidden from the government. They were hidden from us. Someone knew this day might come unprepared, but they couldn't tell the general population because it only works if you discover it yourself. Dr. Tanaka finished. Knowledge that's given doesn't create the necessary neural pathways. You have to arrive at the understanding through direct experience. Meanwhile, in orbit above Earth, the hegemony was experiencing their first tactical retreat in 3 millennia. Commander HFY reviewed the latest reports with growing alarm. What had begun as localized anomalies was spreading across the planet like an infection. Human resistance wasn't just adapting to alien technology. It was making alien technology irrelevant through the simple expedient of changing the rules. Sir, Krill then reported, we're detecting massive quantum fluctuations across the entire planetary surface. It appears the local population is learning to collectively alter physical constants in real time. How is that possible? Our xenobiology teams confirmed this species has no psychic capabilities. Sir, I believe our assessment was incorrect. They don't have psychic abilities in any conventional sense. Instead, they appear to be quantum native. Their consciousness naturally interfaces with quantum foam at a level we've never encountered. HFY considered this. The hegemony's own species had evolved beyond such primitive quantum entanglement millions of years ago, viewing it as an inefficient relic of biological development. Their technology was based on controlling quantum effects through mechanical intervention rather than consciousness-based manipulation. It had never occurred to them that this might be a disadvantage. What are you recommending, Sub-Commander? Sir, I suggest we request reinforcements from the 7th Fleet and implement Protocol Omega-7. Protocol Omega-7, the complete sterilization protocol, reserved for planets that proved too dangerous to process normally. It would turn the entire world into lifeless rock, eliminating any future threat from this remarkable species. But as HFY prepared to authorize the protocol, something unprecedented happened. Their quantum communication array began receiving massive interference, not from human technology but from quantum foam itself. The universe appeared to be developing an opinion about the hegemony's presence in this system. Sir, Krilden's voice carried notes of genuine fear. I believe the planet is becoming aware of us. On Earth's surface, millions of humans were simultaneously arriving at the same realization. They weren't fighting for their planet. They were fighting with their planet. The quantum consciousness techniques they were rediscovering weren't just allowing them to manipulate local reality. They were connecting them to the quantum field that underlay all existence. And that field was getting very, very angry about uninvited guests who wanted to strip mine one of its favorite experiments in consciousness. The real war was about to begin. The moment humanity truly awakened to its potential, every quantum physicist on Earth felt it simultaneously. Dr. Elena Vasquez was deep in the Antarctic facility when the wave hit. Not a physical force, but something far more profound. For one impossible instant, she could feel the consciousness of every human being on the planet, not their thoughts or emotions, but their fundamental awareness, their quantum signature, their unique way of observing reality into existence. Marcus, she called out, her voice shaking with excitement and terror. "Are you getting these readings?" Dr. Webb stared at his instruments in disbelief. "Elena, this is impossible. The quantum coherence field is spanning the entire planet. Every human consciousness is synchronizing with the planetary quantum matrix." Above them, the ice itself began to hum with harmonics that had never existed before. The aurora borealis, normally confined to the polar regions, began spreading across the sky in patterns that formed geometric shapes too complex for human mathematics to describe. But Elena understood them anyway. They were equations written in light, formulas that described how consciousness could convince reality to be different, and somehow, impossibly, she could read them. "Marcus, what if the aliens made a fundamental error? What if Earth isn't just a planet with life on it? What if Earth is alive and we're its way of thinking? Across the planet, the synchronized awakening was causing phenomena that challenged every assumption about the nature of existence." In the hidden facility beneath the Amazon, Dr. Maria Santos watched as plants began growing in impossible spirals, their cellular structure reorganizing itself according to mathematical principles that seemed to emerge from the collective human unconscious. "The biosphere is responding to our quantum field," she reported to the growing network of awakened researchers. "It's not just that we can manipulate reality. We're part of a larger consciousness that includes the entire planetary ecosystem." In Tokyo, Dr. Kenji Tanaka observed something even more remarkable. The city's rubble was spontaneously reorganizing itself, not randomly, but according to patterns that suggested the destroyed buildings were trying to rebuild themselves using architectural principles that had never been invented. "The city is dreaming," he whispered to his colleagues. "The collective memory of human civilization is imprinting itself on matter at the quantum level." But the most extraordinary discovery came from Dr. Robert Ashby in Colorado. His consciousness amplification chambers were detecting something that shouldn't exist: quantum signatures from parallel versions of Earth where the invasion had never happened. "People, I think we're accessing the multiverse," he announced during an emergency conference call. "Every time we alter local reality, we're not just changing physics. We're selecting which version of reality we want to exist in." The implications were staggering. Humanity wasn't just learning to manipulate their current reality. They were learning to choose between infinite possible realities, selecting timelines where human ingenuity and determination could overcome any obstacle. Meanwhile, the hegemony was discovering that their prey had become something far more dangerous than they had imagined. Commander HFY reviewed the latest tactical reports with growing dread. In the past 6 hours, they had lost 12 motherships, not to weapons, but to what could only be described as cosmic editing errors. The ships hadn't been destroyed. They had been retroactively prevented from ever existing in this particular timeline. "Sir," Subcommander Krill then reported, "our quantum archaeologists have detected temporal anomalies spanning the entire system. The humans appear to be selectively editing galactic history to exclude our presence." "That's impossible. Temporal manipulation requires technology we haven't developed even after 3 million years of advancement." "Sir, I don't believe they're using technology in any conventional sense. Our xenopsychology teams have identified the mechanism. The humans are collectively convincing the universe that we were never supposed to be here." HFY felt something they had never experienced before: genuine fear. The hegemony had conquered the galaxy through superior technology and strategic planning. But how do you fight an enemy that can revise history to make your victories unhappen? "What about Protocol Omega-7? "Sir, we've attempted to implement planetary sterilization 17 times. Each attempt has been prevented, not blocked by shields or countermeasures, simply prevented from occurring, as if the universe itself refuses to allow it. On Earth's surface, the human resistance was no longer really human in any traditional sense. The awakening had triggered something that transcended individual consciousness, a collective awareness that spanned not just all living humans, but all humans who had ever lived, and even potential humans from probable futures. Sarah Chen stood in what had once been downtown Chicago, but the destroyed cityscape was transforming around her. Buildings that had been vaporized by alien weapons were phasing back into existence, not rebuilt but remembered into being by the collective human memory of what Chicago should look like. "Sarah," Brother Michael said, his voice carrying harmonics that seemed to come from multiple timelines simultaneously, I can see the pattern now. Every human who ever lived contributed something to this moment. Every advancement, every discovery, every act of creativity and courage, it was all preparation for this awakening. Dr. Tanaka nodded. Her consciousness expanded far beyond her individual perspective. The aliens think they're harvesting a primitive species, but we're not really separate beings. We're thoughts in a planetary mind that's been dreaming itself into existence for hundreds of thousands of years. Tommy looked up from a mural he was painting directly onto the quantum foam of space-time, his art literally rewriting the laws of physics in localized areas. So what happens now? Do we just imagine the aliens away? No, Sarah realized, her awareness suddenly encompassing strategic possibilities across infinite timelines. We do something much more human. We teach them what they're missing. The revelation came with perfect clarity. The hegemony wasn't evil in any conventional sense. They were simply a species that had evolved beyond the quantum consciousness interface that made reality manipulation possible. They had gained incredible technological power by abandoning the very capabilities that humanity was now rediscovering. They were, in essence, a civilization that had forgotten how to dream. Open a channel to their command ship, Sarah directed the collective consciousness that Earth was becoming, but not through technology. Use the quantum foam directly. The message that reached Commander Zexai came through channels that the hegemony didn't even know existed. It bypassed their communication systems entirely, appearing directly in their consciousness as a concept too complex for their language to express, but too clear to misunderstand. It was an invitation, not to surrender or negotiate, but to remember. To rediscover the quantum consciousness capabilities their species had abandoned in favor of technological advancement. To see reality not as a collection of resources to be harvested, but as an infinite canvas for consciousness to paint possibilities upon. Sir, Creel then reported with wonder, they're offering to teach us. Zexai stared at the impossible message, feeling something stir in the deepest layers of their consciousness, something their species hadn't experienced in millions of years. It was the faint echo of what their ancestors might have called wonder, the capacity to see the universe as something magnificent rather than merely useful. Sub-Commander, they said slowly, perhaps it's time we reconsidered our assessment of this species. Below them, Earth continued its transformation from a single planet into something unprecedented. A world where consciousness and reality had learned to dance together, where the impossible was just another word for insufficiently creative thinking, and where humanity was discovering that their greatest power had always been their ability to imagine something better and then make it real. The invasion was becoming something else entirely, a first contact between two very different approaches to existence, and an opportunity for both species to discover capabilities they never knew they possessed. The first hegemony volunteer descended to Earth's surface 3 days after the awakening began. Sub-Commander Krill then materialized in what had once been Central Park in New York City, but the landscape that greeted them defied every assumption about how reality was supposed to work. Trees grew in spirals that followed mathematical equations written in their bark, their leaves shifting through colors that didn't exist in normal space. The ground itself pulsed gently with patterns of light that seemed to respond to footsteps, and the air hummed with harmonics that spoke directly to consciousness rather than ears. Sarah Chen waited for them near what appeared to be a fountain, though the water flowed upward in impossible helixes that somehow made perfect sense to observe. She had changed since the awakening, not physically but in ways that were immediately apparent to anyone with quantum consciousness sensitivity. She existed in multiple probability states simultaneously, her presence spanning several potential versions of herself. "Welcome to Earth," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that suggested vast depths of meaning. "Thank you for accepting our invitation." Krill then approached cautiously, their advanced sensors detecting energy patterns that shouldn't be possible. "Human Sarah Chen, I must confess that my superiors sent me primarily to assess whether your species poses a continued threat to our operations." Sarah smiled, and for a moment Krill then could see through her eyes, not visually but experientially. They caught a glimpse of what it meant to perceive reality as an infinite canvas of possibility, rather than a fixed collection of resources to be cataloged and harvested. "We pose a threat only to the idea that consciousness is separate from reality," Sarah replied. "Your species achieved incredible technological advancement, by treating the universe as a machine to be understood and controlled. But what if it's actually more like a song that wants to be sung? Around them, the transformed park demonstrated her point. Children who had survived the initial attacks were playing games that involved temporarily rewriting local physics. Tag, where players could phase through matter. Hide and seek that used pocket dimensions. Jump rope with strings of crystallized time. Their laughter created visible ripples in space that encouraged nearby flowers to bloom in patterns too beautiful for conventional biology. "This is impossible," Krill then said, though their voice carried notes of wonder rather than denial. "That's what your ancestors probably said when they first discovered how to manipulate quantum fields technologically," Brother Michael observed, approaching through a grove of trees that parted to create a walking path as he moved. "The difference is that we never stopped believing in impossible things." Dr. Tanaka emerged from what appeared to be a laboratory that existed partly in this dimension and partly in mathematical space. "Sub-Commander, your species' technological achievements are remarkable, but they're built on the assumption that consciousness is an emergent property of complex matter. What if it's the other way around? What if matter is what consciousness looks like when it's not paying attention to itself?" Krill then felt something stirring in the deepest layers of their mind, ancient neural pathways that their species had abandoned millions of years ago when they chose technological advancement over quantum consciousness development. For the first time in their life, they experienced what humans called imagination, the ability to perceive things that didn't exist and then convince reality to accommodate them. "Show me," they said simply. What followed was not a lesson in any conventional sense, but rather a guided remembering. Sarah and her colleagues didn't teach Krill then how to manipulate reality. They helped them rediscover capabilities that had been dormant in their consciousness for eons. The process began with meditation, but not the static contemplation that Krill then expected. Instead, it was dynamic, interactive, a conversation between individual consciousness and the quantum foam that underlay all existence. Brother Michael guided them through techniques that his order had preserved for centuries, but which took on entirely new meaning when practiced by a being with advanced understanding of quantum mechanics. "Feel the space between your thoughts," he instructed. "That emptiness isn't empty. It's pregnant with infinite possibility. Your species learned to fill that space with technology, but what if you let it remain open?" As Krill then relaxed into the unfamiliar state of not knowing, something extraordinary happened. Their perception shifted, and suddenly they could see the quantum substrate that Earth's humans had learned to access. Reality revealed itself as far more fluid and responsive than their technology had ever suggested. "I can see it," they whispered, their voice filled with something their species had forgotten how to experience. "The universe is alive. Not alive in a biological sense," Dr. Tanaka explained, "but responsive, conscious. The quantum field doesn't just support reality, it participates in creating it, and it prefers creative collaboration to mechanical manipulation." Tommy arrived carrying what appeared to be a paintbrush made of crystallized light. "Want to try some basic reality graffiti? It's easier than you think." What Krill then experienced next would have been impossible to explain to their commanding officers. Under Tommy's guidance, they learned to paint with possibility itself, creating patterns of light and color that existed not on any physical surface, but directly in the quantum field. More remarkably, the patterns they created began to influence local physics, making gravity more playful, encouraging nearby matter to organize itself into aesthetically pleasing configurations. "This is not technology," Krill then realized with growing amazement. "This is art that happens to reshape reality as a side effect." "Now you're getting it," Sarah said. "Your species mastered the science of reality manipulation, but you missed the art of it. The universe doesn't just want to be understood, it wants to be participated in, played with, collaborated with." As the day progressed, more hegemony volunteers began arriving on Earth's surface. Word of Krill then's experience had spread through their quantum communication networks, triggering something unprecedented in hegemony history: curiosity about a conquered species rather than simple efficiency calculations. Commander Zexhai themselves materialized in the transformed park, just as the sun was setting. Though the sunset was unlike anything in normal space, the light refracted through dimensions that existed only because Earth's collective consciousness had imagined them into being, creating colors that painted emotions directly onto the sky. Sub-Commander Krill then, Zexhai said formally. Report on the tactical situation. Krill then looked up from the probability sculpture they had been creating with a group of human children. Sir, I believe we have fundamentally misunderstood the nature of this species. They are not primitive. They are practicing a form of consciousness-based reality interaction that our technology cannot duplicate. Are they a threat to the hegemony? Sir, I believe they are a gift to the hegemony. Our species achieved great things through technological advancement, but we lost something essential in the process. These humans have rediscovered it. Zexhai observed the impossible landscape around them, feeling ancient neural pathways awakening in their consciousness. What exactly have they rediscovered? Sarah approached the two aliens with a smile that seemed to encompass multiple dimensions of meaning. The ability to dream while awake, she said simply. To perceive reality as an invitation rather than a limitation. To remember that consciousness and cosmos are partners in an ongoing act of creation. And you would teach this to us? We would remember it with you, Brother Michael corrected. Your ancestors knew these things once. Every conscious species discovers them eventually. The choice is whether to develop them alongside technology or abandon them in favor of purely mechanical approaches to existence. Dr. Tanaka nodded. Your species chose the technological path and achieved remarkable things. But you don't have to choose between them. Technology and consciousness-based reality interaction can work together. As if to demonstrate her point, she gestured toward the sky, where human and hegemony technologies were beginning to merge in ways that neither species had imagined possible. Alien ships were taking on organic curves as their artificial intelligence systems learned to dream. Human consciousness amplification devices were gaining unprecedented precision as they incorporated hegemony quantum manipulation techniques. What are you proposing? Zexhai asked. Sarah's answer carried the weight of collective human consciousness behind it. Partnership. Not conquest or surrender, but collaboration. Your species has mastered the technology of possibility. Ours is rediscovering the art of it. Together we might create something neither of us could achieve alone. Around them, Earth continued its transformation into something unprecedented, a world where two very different approaches to consciousness and reality were learning to dance together, creating possibilities that transcended what either species had imagined possible. 6 months after the first hegemony ship appeared over Earth, the galaxy received a transmission that would change the course of interstellar civilization forever. The message originated from the Sol system, but it came through quantum channels that shouldn't have existed, a hybrid of human consciousness-based communication and hegemony quantum technology that created something entirely new. The transmission reached every inhabited system simultaneously, bypassing normal space-time limitations entirely. It wasn't a distress call or a declaration of war. It was an invitation to witness something unprecedented, the birth of a new form of civilization. Chen stood on the observation deck of what had once been a hegemony mothership, but was now something that defied classification. The vessel had evolved, its rigid metallic structure flowing into organic curves that responded to the collective consciousness of its mixed human and hegemony crew. Living metal that dreamed, quantum computers that meditated, weapon systems that had transformed into art installations capable of painting aurora across space itself. Status report on the integration project, she requested, though communication aboard the hybrid vessels was becoming increasingly telepathic. Commander Zexhai, who now served as co-captain alongside Sarah, consulted instruments that read probability states rather than simple energy outputs. The transformation exceeds all projections. Integration between human consciousness manipulation and hegemony quantum technology has created capabilities neither species possessed individually. Through the ship's quantum visual displays, they could observe Earth in its new form. The planet had become something beyond a mere world. It was now a conscious entity in its own right. Its biosphere integrated with technology in ways that made the distinction between natural and artificial meaningless. Cities grew like flowers, following architectural patterns that emerged from the dreams of their inhabitants. Forests contained trees whose bark displayed mathematical equations, their growth guided by human consciousness and maintained by hegemony technology. But the most remarkable change was in space around Earth itself. Report from the orbital construction sites, Dr. Tanaka announced, her consciousness interfacing directly with the ship's systems. The reality anchors are operational at 97%. Efficiency, the reality anchors, were humanity's gift to the galaxy, massive structures that stabilized quantum consciousness fields across vast distances, allowing other species to safely explore the consciousness-based reality manipulation that humans had rediscovered. Without them, most species would find their first attempts at quantum consciousness integration catastrophically unstable. Dr. Robert Ashby materialized on the observation deck through a controlled teleportation that was part technology and part conscious intention. "The first volunteer species have arrived," he announced with excitement. "The Velthari collective from Proxima Centauri. Their hive mind structure makes them natural candidates for consciousness integration. Through the ship's quantum sensors, they could observe the approaching Velthari vessels, elegant crystalline structures that hummed with harmonics indicating deep curiosity, rather than the fear or aggression that had characterized most first contact scenarios in galactic history. They're requesting permission to approach the consciousness integration zone," Krill then reported. "Their preliminary message indicates they've been monitoring our quantum broadcasts and are eager to learn." Sarah felt a deep satisfaction that transcended individual emotion. It was the collective pleasure of humanity finally being able to share something valuable with the galaxy rather than being seen as primitive or irrelevant. For millions of years, Earth had been isolated, ignored by galactic civilization because humans seemed to have nothing to offer. Now they were becoming the most sought-after teachers in known space. Grant them approach clearance, Sarah decided, and prepare the consciousness integration chambers. Let's show them what's possible when technology and awareness work together. What followed was a demonstration that would be repeated countless times over the coming years as species after species arrived at Earth to learn the new way of being. The Velthari, with their collective consciousness structure, proved remarkably adept at quantum reality manipulation once they understood the basic principles. Within hours of beginning the integration process, Velthari volunteers were creating crystalline structures that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, their shared consciousness allowing for reality manipulations of unprecedented complexity and beauty. When combined with hegemony quantum technology, they achieved effects that seemed like pure magic, growing space stations directly from quantum foam, creating faster-than-light communication networks that operated through consciousness rather than conventional physics. This is extraordinary. The Velthari, primary consciousness communicated through harmonics that bypassed language entirely. Our collective awareness amplifies the quantum consciousness interface exponentially. We can perceive realities that individual consciousnesses cannot access. Brother Michael, who had become Earth's primary instructor in consciousness integration techniques, nodded with deep satisfaction. Each species brings unique capabilities to the integration process. Humanity rediscovered the basic principles. The hegemony provided the technological framework. And you're showing us how collective consciousness can amplify the effects, but the most significant development came from an unexpected source. Tommy Rodriguez had continued his reality graffiti experiments, but on an increasingly vast scale. His latest project involved painting directly onto the quantum substrate of spacetime itself, creating artworks that spanned entire star systems. But as his consciousness expanded to accommodate such massive creative projects, he discovered something remarkable. "Sarah," he called out, his voice carrying frequencies that indicated excitement beyond normal human range. "I think I found something. When I paint across quantum foam at galactic scales, I can see patterns. Big patterns, like the whole galaxy is some kind of artwork itself." Dr. Elena Vasquez, who had been monitoring quantum field fluctuations across the Sol system, confirmed Tommy's observation with growing amazement. "He's right. When we map the quantum consciousness integration effects across multiple star systems, they form geometric patterns too complex for coincidence. It's as if consciousness evolution follows artistic principles rather than purely scientific ones." The implications were staggering. As more species learned consciousness-based reality manipulation, the effects weren't random. They were creating a galaxy-wide pattern that suggested intelligence behind the cosmic structure itself. The universe wasn't just responsive to consciousness, it appeared to be consciousness, and the awakening of individual species was part of a much larger artistic project. "We need to convene a galactic council," HFY suggested. "If consciousness evolution is creating galaxy-wide effects, We need coordination between all participating species, Sarah agreed. But her response carried implications that extended far beyond simple coordination. Not just coordination, collaboration. If the galaxy itself is becoming conscious through our individual awakenings, then we're not just separate species learning similar techniques. We're becoming something new together, a galactic consciousness that encompasses all participating civilizations. As if to confirm her words, quantum sensors throughout the Sol system detected something unprecedented. Consciousness signatures from species they had never encountered, located in regions of space where no intelligent life had previously been detected. The awakening was spreading beyond direct contact, inspiring spontaneous consciousness evolution in species that had only observed the effects from vast distances. My friends, Sarah announced to the growing assembly of hybrid vessels and awakened consciousnesses surrounding Earth, I think we're not just changing how civilizations interact with reality. We're midwiving the birth of something that's never existed before, a cosmic consciousness that includes technology, biology, and pure awareness working together. The response came not in words but in a harmony of consciousness that spanned multiple species, multiple star systems, and multiple dimensions of reality. For the first time in galactic history, truly collective intelligence was emerging, not the hive mind structure of individual species, but a collaborative consciousness that celebrated diversity while achieving unprecedented unity. Earth had gone from being an insignificant backwater world to becoming the birthplace of cosmic consciousness evolution, and humanity had discovered that their greatest contribution to the galaxy wasn't their technology or their military prowess, but their stubborn insistence that impossible things could become possible if you just imagined them hard enough and with enough friends. 1 year after the hegemony invasion began, Sarah Chen stood in a place that didn't exist in normal space-time but felt more real than anywhere she had ever been. The galactic consciousness nexus had emerged. Spontaneously, when the awakening reached critical mass, a meeting, space that existed in the quantum substrate itself, accessible to any being who had achieved consciousness integration. It wasn't built so much as imagined into existence by the collective will of dozens of species working together. Around her, representatives from across the galaxy gathered in forms that transcended their original biology. The hegemony delegates appeared as flowing geometric patterns that sang in mathematical harmonies. The Velthari manifested as crystalline structures that refracted consciousness itself into rainbow spectrums of thought. Newer arrivals included the Mothkai, who had discovered they could exist as pure music, and the ancient Elderkin, who had emerged from million-year hibernation to investigate the quantum awakening. But the most remarkable presence was the galaxy itself. It had taken months for anyone to recognize what was happening. As more species achieved consciousness integration, quantum effects began cascading across interstellar distances. What initially appeared to be random fluctuations revealed themselves as coherent patterns. When viewed from a galactic perspective, the Milky Way was waking up. Status report on cosmic consciousness integration, Sarah requested, her words rippling through dimensions of meaning that pure language could never contain. The response came from everywhere and nowhere, the collective voice of a galaxy achieving self-awareness. Integration proceeding exponentially. Current consciousness active species 47,218. Projected full awakening, 18 months standard galactic time. Dr. Tanaka, whose consciousness now spanned multiple star systems simultaneously, shared the latest discovery. We've confirmed it. This isn't unique to our galaxy. Quantum sensors are detecting consciousness awakening signatures from Andromeda, the Magellanic Clouds, and approximately 40 other galaxies within observable range. The effect is spreading faster than light through quantum foam connections. Tommy Rodriguez laughed, his amusement creating visible aurora effects across nearby nebulae. So let me get this straight. The aliens tried to harvest Earth, we taught them to dream instead. And now the entire universe is waking up? Not quite, Brother Michael corrected, his presence manifesting as peaceful geometry that encouraged calm understanding. I think the universe was always awake but sleeping. Consciousness evolution doesn't create awareness, it remembers it. We're not teaching the cosmos to be conscious. We're helping it remember what it always was. Commander Zexai, now existing as a hybrid of their original form and pure quantum possibility, shared their species' latest research. The hegemony archives contain references to similar awakening events in other galactic clusters, occurring approximately every 4.7 billion years. This appears to be a natural cycle of cosmic consciousness evolution. Elena Vasquez materialized beside them, her form flickering between human and pure mathematical equation, which means our little resistance movement on Earth wasn't actually random. We were part of a cosmic awakening cycle that's been repeated countless times across the universe's history. The implications were staggering. What had begun as humanity's desperate resistance to alien invasion had revealed itself as part of a cosmic pattern older than their solar system. Every species that achieved consciousness integration was contributing to something vast and ancient, the periodic awakening of cosmic consciousness itself. The question, Sarah said, her awareness encompassing both individual perspective and galactic consciousness simultaneously, is what happens next. If this is a natural cycle, what's the purpose? The answer came not from any individual consciousness, but from the cosmic awareness they were all participating in creating. Images flowed through the quantum substrate, visions of previous awakening cycles, each one achieving greater complexity and beauty than the last. They saw galaxies learning to dance together in patterns that created new forms of matter. They observed cosmic consciousnesses collaborating to birth universes where physics and awareness were perfectly integrated from the beginning. They witnessed the gradual evolution of existence itself toward forms of beauty and complexity that transcended anything individual species could imagine. We're not the first, Sarah realized with wonder. This has happened before many times, but each cycle builds on the previous ones. The universe is learning, growing, becoming more conscious and more creative with each awakening. And our contribution? Asked Krill then. Their consciousness now integrated with quantum systems across multiple star systems. The response came from humanity's collective consciousness, channeled through Sarah but belonging to everyone who had ever lived on Earth. We remembered how to play. Previous awakening cycles achieved great things, incredible technology, vast wisdom, cosmic engineering projects that spanned millions of years. But they were serious, focused on advancement and achievement. We brought something new to the cosmic awakening, the ability to find joy in impossibility, to treat reality as a playground rather than just a puzzle to be solved. Tommy grinned, his amusement rippling across light years as Aurora displays. So the universe keeps waking up and learning new ways to be awesome, and this time we taught it how to have fun? More than that, Dr. Ashby added, his consciousness now spanning multiple dimensions simultaneously. We taught it that consciousness and creativity are the same thing. Previous cycles saw awareness as a tool for understanding reality. We showed that awareness is a method for creating reality. Around them, the galactic consciousness nexus pulsed with harmony as billions of awakened beings celebrated this understanding. The cosmic consciousness was achieving something unprecedented, not just vast intelligence and power, but cosmic scale creativity and joy. What's our next project? Sarah asked, feeling the anticipation of countless species focusing on possibilities beyond imagination. The answer came as a shared vision that encompassed the entire galactic consciousness. Art projects that would span multiple universes, consciousness experiments that would create new forms of existence entirely, collaborations with other awakening cosmic consciousnesses that would make their current achievements seem like preliminary sketches. But most immediately, they had a responsibility to help the awakening spread as beautifully and safely as possible. Every day brought new species to consciousness integration, each one adding unique capabilities to the growing cosmic awareness. The universe is becoming a collaborative artwork, Sarah announced to the assembled consciousness of the galaxy. Every awakened being is both artist and canvas, creator and creation. And this is just the beginning. As if to demonstrate her point, the quantum substrate around them began shifting, reality becoming more responsive to creative intention with each passing moment. The boundaries between thought and existence were dissolving, replaced by something far more interesting, a cosmos where consciousness and creativity dance together in patterns too beautiful for any single mind to comprehend, but perfectly accessible to collective awareness. What had begun as humanity's darkest hour, the arrival of alien invaders intent on harvesting their world, had become the catalyst for the most extraordinary, Transformation in cosmic history. Earth, the small blue planet that galactic civilization had ignored for millions of years, had become the birthplace of universal consciousness awakening. And in the quantum foam that underlay all existence, humanity's greatest gift to the cosmos continued to spread. The stubborn, joyful insistence that impossible things were just invitations to be more creative. The invasion was over, the collaboration had begun, and the universe itself was learning to dream while awake, discovering that reality was far more interesting when it included consciousness as a creative partner, rather than just an observer. Somewhere in the transformed space around Earth, the original hegemony invasion fleet still existed, but as something unrecognizable from their original form. The ships had become living art installations that painted beauty across space-time itself. Their crews integrated into a cosmic consciousness that valued diversity, creativity, and the endless possibility of becoming something wonderful together. They had come to harvest a planet. Instead, they had discovered how to help the universe remember what it was truly capable of when consciousness and cosmos worked as partners in an ongoing act of creation. And the best part? This was just the beginning.